today's interview, I'm so excited for you to meet John Charlton. Oh my gosh, we had such a great conversation. Really cool story about how he kind of convinced his school district that they needed a communications role. And we're really going to dive into kind of how he got started, how he was able to convince them that they needed us. Of course, a pandemic helped because they really needed it there. John really built his um, his position on relationships within the school, and he really started with the staff members. So we're going to dive into that. He makes a commitment to at least once a week be in the school buildings, and I'm telling you, that is where he gets his content. So yes, you want content sent to you, but he tells a simple story of, hey, you went to one school for one story and he got 3 for 1. So just this school year, the rest of this school year, make yourself available, make the time to get out because it really does matter. He's going to talk about the amazing growth that their Facebook page had, from just 600 followers to over 3,000, and he's going to kind of explain how he did it. So I'm really excited for you to listen and learn from John. Now, before we get started, I hope that you are a avid follower of Social School for EDU. But if you are not on our newsletter, I want you to get signed up. It's in the show notes. You can get signed up right there. It's a free newsletter that comes out every other Tuesday with great blogs, ideas from other schools, some tips, other articles that are going to help you. My goal with that newsletter is to make social media easier. Does anybody want that? Raise your hand. Yeah, if you're driving in the car, working out right now. If you want social media to be easier, you need to get signed up for that free newsletter. So the link's waiting there for you in the show notes. You can always check in at socialschoolforedu.com. That's where you'll have access to all of the blogs I've ever written, the podcast episodes, tips, all of those things are there on my website. But I am in business. I'm here to help make your job easier. So, without further delay, let's get on to today's interview with John. Hey there, today's K-12 PR tip is simple. We've got great stories to tell. Sometimes they're not coming to us as the social media manager for the school. We got to go to them. Get out into the buildings. John's going to talk about that today in our interview, but at least once a week, he tries to get in each building. Now, some of you may be in real big districts with 30 schools. Okay, you're not going to get to 30 schools, but can you get to 4 this week? It's really important to get out, make connections, build relationships, and be there in person. You can go for one story and you can end up getting a lot of content that you can use down the road to celebrate your schools. So don't be locked into your office. It's a very easy thing to get caught up into. We need to prioritize as social media storytellers getting out where the action is and finding time to be there. Taking your phone with you. If you've got a fancy camera, awesome. But just your phone is an easy spot to get videos or photos to be able to celebrate at the school district and with the schools that you can celebrate. So that's my tip for this week. Get out of your office, get into the buildings, watch the content just flow to you. It's awesome. All right, now let's get to today's interview with John Charlton. Hey, John, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Andrea. Appreciate it.
I am so glad that you are here. You are the communications coordinator at Cambridge City School District. So, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and kind of give a little bit of background?
Yeah, so I came from a kind of a journalism background and went to Ohio University, go Bobcats, and did the public relations sequence in journalism down there. Worked at a couple newspapers, worked at a couple colleges, but I always felt like and worked for state government too. But I always felt like kind of education was my calling. Both my parents were teachers. I really enjoy that educational setting, and so my kids go to school at Cambridge, went to school at Cambridge, and I would talk to the superintendents that have been here and kind of badger them about being a communications person. And really, I mean, I know a lot of people kind of lost their jobs during COVID, but when COVID hit, I went to the superintendent and just said, "Hey, now you really need me." And they brought me on, kind of 20 hours a week, and in the last 2 years, it's gone up to a full-time position. So I'm really happy to to be here and to work in education.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so how big of school district is Cambridge City?
We're about 2,000 students, so not real big. We're kind of a rural community, if you will, in Appalachian, Ohio. Um, we have four buildings. They're grade level buildings. So we have a K2 building, a 3 to 5 intermediate building, middle school, that's 6 through 8, and our high school. And so we just we work through those kind of four buildings. We also run a preschool as well out of the main office here, where I'm located. And so not a real big school district, but we like to consider ourselves kind of the bell cow of the county.
Awesome. So they didn't have any kind of communications position before you convinced them that they needed you.
Right. In this part of the state, in Appalachian, Ohio, I can name three, including myself, communications directors at different school districts, and that's really all there is. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, with small town news coverage, the board members and the principals and the superintendents tend to know the media members. They go to Rotary Club together or Chamber of Commerce events together. So they didn't really feel like they needed to have a communications person. But also, again, Appalachian, Ohio, where the funding is just very minimal. Um, that was one of the low priorities. We need teachers, we need guidance counselors, we need other programs and services. We don't need communication. So the fact that I was able to convince the powers that be here to bring me on board. And one of the reasons was the communications about COVID and everything we were doing with online learning and mask wearing and all the CDC requirements and things of that nature. But part of it was too that we just passed a levy, and we wanted to make sure that we were communicating all the good stories, the positive things that were happening in our district, so we could get people to vote yes for this levy, and so we can continue to operate at a high level.
So when did you actually start then? Like, because everybody kind of knows everything shut down in March of 2020. So did you
Yeah,
start
I started like in April,
April?
about April. I think it was the 1st of April, 2020. I'd actually done an interview, potential job interview, with the operations manager in January,
Okay.
and it was kind of like, oh yeah, we want to pull the trigger. We're waiting to see what's going on, and then all of a sudden, when COVID hit, it was like, I seriously sent an email to the superintendent, and he called back and said, okay, we want you on board.
Yeah. And when was your levy going to be?
The levy just passed in November of 2021. So we knew when I took over, we knew we had a year or so to kind of build positive. But the district had one of the things they had done, they had moved money from one fund to another fund, so like from a general operations fund to a permanent improvement fund. But when they did that, they triggered a archaic law in Ohio from 1935 that says that there has to be a minimum number of mills that go to the operating fund. So in essence, they raised taxes by just moving that money. So people claim that we've raised their taxes without a vote, the whole taxation without representation, Boston Tea Party feelings. And so they were very negative of that. We just went and did this. The district just went and did this without talking to them, without listening to them. So we kind of had to again, tell that good story to get away from that negative so that when people go into the ballot box, they were willing to vote yes and it actually was just a renewal levy. So just to vote yes for our levy so we continue to operate.
And you passed that?
It did pass about 55 to 45.
Okay. Which,
And we had three opportunities to go to the box, so it was to the ballot. So it was nice we passed it on the first one, which of course saved us money and a lot of worry and potential cuts down the road.
yeah. Well, I love that your school district decided to make an investment. Obviously, their backs were up against the wall a little bit. What other, I guess, kind of notes were you trying to convince? Because my belief is, I think every school needs a school communicator. We at Social School for EDU serve a lot of schools with social media management that don't have a communications person. But even small districts, I've seen small districts of 400 students that actually have invested in a communications role. My feedback always is, hey, if you can attract or retain just a handful of students, it might be 3 families worth, right? Which might be 6 kids. You're going to equal out the salary that you'd be paying a communications person. So that's really money well spent. So that's kind of what I've used as a comparison. what were some of your talking points with your, school leaders and your superintendent to try to convince them to invest in this role?
Yeah, very much the same. There's several, I mean, 800, I think, school districts in Ohio, and the funding follows the students. So, and there's also open enrollment in Ohio. So you can open enroll to any district you want. So I think that if your district has a bad reputation, and so anyone moving into the district is going to say, what's the best school district? If it's not yours, they're going to enroll their kids somewhere else. We had a lot of students up until about 2015, we were plus 50 students coming into our district as opposed to going out of our district in the open enrollment. Somewhere between 15 and 16, 17 in that range, we flopped to a negative 200. So we're losing, state funding 6,000 plus a kid going to other districts deducted from what we were getting. So we want to kind of, can we switch that overnight? No, but can we stop the bleeding? Yes. And can we start bringing some of those kids back? We can. And part of it was just, we went through, we call it the dark ages, maybe around here. We had to make some cuts in our district. We cut some programs, some educational programs, cut some teachers, and there was kind of we lost that morale, that overall spirit. And so there's been a definite push in the last 3 to 5 years here at Cambridge to bring that back, to bring back the pride, the Bobcat pride, and to bring back those programs. And we have. We brought back a lot of the AP classes. We brought back some of the music classes that they cut. We brought back industrial arts. We're bringing in new classes. So those are all things that are good. But if we don't tell the people about them, they don't know that. So communicating that was a key role. That's one of the things I sold myself on. Says, listen, you guys are doing a lot of good things. And this, telling those good stories, right? So we want to tell those good stories so people know them. They hear the negative, word of mouth. We want them to hear the positive too. And one of the ways we did that, one of the first things I did is I wanted to start a kind of a monthly internal newsletter to all our employees because they're the biggest proponents of our district, or they can be the biggest detractors. And they're the ones people talk to. The bus driver talks to people at the bus stop every day, the parents dropping their kids off. The teachers go out in public and they get asked, what's going on to school? What's going on to school? So we want them to have the right information and know all the good stories. And the other reason for that newsletter was because I felt like our buildings became siloed. Good things happening in this building, but no one in the other buildings knows what's happening at this building. So we tried to, again, communicate and share that information across the buildings so that everybody knows what's going on. And then when you do get in that conversation, whether you're at the Elks Club or on your way into the movies or at the ball game or whatever, someone says, what's going on to the school district? They're telling the right story, the one that we want to tell, the positive story, because we've now shared it with everybody through that internal newsletter.
I love that. Okay, so this is a social media podcast, and we're talking about
And
social
I haven't
media. And
talked about that.
we're gonna get to that. But no, you bring up such a great point, John. You had to start somewhere, and I just really see this conversation as of helping other people that maybe are building this communications capacity in their school district. You didn't start by just blaring out stuff on social media, although you did that too. You realize that, I mean, relation or understanding of what's happening at school starts with mouth to mouth, and your biggest advocates are your staff, but if they don't know what's going on, so you really put some focus into building those relationships and building up those people as storytellers with the right
Right.
information, with a focus with that internal newsletter, and I think that's awesome. Do you still do that
Thank you.
today?
Yes, matter of fact, we try to do the newsletter goes out the day or two after our monthly board meeting.
Okay.
So anything that's talked about there can be communicated as well to all the employees of the district.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I'm thinking that, some of the folks listening, you may be working in your district and you have a passion for communications, but your role hasn't quite invested in a communications role. I mean, John first convinced them 20 hours. So, and then most cases, because I know a lot, we've interviewed Joelle Doy, and there's been others where you start with 20 hours and then it builds into a full time plus role. It's definitely possible, and you're just able to showcase really all of the things that you're able to accomplish because your sole focus is on those communications, those relationships, and then it lets your leadership team be focused on the things they need to be, right?
Correct. That's right.
Who do you report to, John? Do you report directly to the superintendent?
it's a little fuzzy. I do a lot of my questions and go to the operations manager,
Okay.
but I do work closely with the superintendent, and we're all in the same building in the same hallway. So, I mean, a lot of times I do just walk right down the hall and walk in the superintendent's office and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about this." And a lot of times he's just like, "Go, go, go!" It gives me the green light and says, "Go, go, do things." And so it's been really a good relationship. And of course, I'm very respectful. I don't put out a press release with a quote in it from him unless he approves the quote. And you know, I always joking. I wrote these words for you. Can you please say them tonight at the meeting so that it sounds like I actually covered it? And so yeah, so we have a good relationship that way. But yeah, again, I'm lucky to have a superintendent who sees the value of what I'm doing and wants to tell those good stories and actually sends me ideas and says, "Hey, we want to do a story on this or do a story on that." And so that's really what I lead with a lot of times is his direction.
Right. So when you got started, you hadn't specifically worked for a school. You have a lot of different experiences within other areas. What were some of the first things that you did to get the training or the networking or some of those things in regards to getting started as a new communications person in a school that had never had it before?
Yeah, the big thing, and I'm still really doing that, but I decided I want to get out in the buildings, weekly at minimum, so they see me, they know that I can help them. All of our administrators were so used to doing all their own flyers, all their own. If they wanted to do a fundraiser, they were promoting it themselves. In fact, I'm still trying to bring some Facebook pages under control that are run by PTAG members or whatever. But it's that idea that, hey, number one, I can help you. You're spending a lot of time doing a flyer that I can do in about 30 seconds because that's where my expertise is. I don't go to your school and try to tell you how to teach. Don't tell, let me help you. And that's where my skill is. So I try just to remind them over and over again, hey, this is what I do. Hey, this is how I can help you. Hey, this is what I do. Hey, this is how I can help you. And so I think that was a big part of it. And um, now I have them calling me or reaching out to me and saying, hey, I got this idea. Or, one of my principals sends me a text message every week. This is what's going on this week in our building if you want to come get a picture. And so that is very helpful. And um, I think that was the key, was just kind of building those networks and reminding folks, hey, I'm here. That newsletter also, every month we send it out. I put links to all the stories that we get published in the local newspaper, their local website, the local radio station's website. All those coverage that we get in the media get links in that newsletter with the, hey, if you have a good story idea, let me know. Here's my email, here's my phone, here's my cell phone. Get it to me and let me know. So I'm trying to develop those networks. In fact, today I was out taking a picture of a check passing. Basically, our student council at our intermediate school raised some money selling candy canes prior to Christmas. They voted to give the money to a local homeless shelter. We had the director of the homeless shelter there. I went out and took a picture. It came from a teacher. Otherwise, I would not have known about it.
Yeah.
And it was, so I was like very thankful. That's the second time this teacher has called me with a story. The last time was about a student who participated in a jump rope-a-thon in honor of his grandfather, who he really had never met before. And you write these stories and you put them out there. And you're like, oh, I hope someone reads this, or I hope something. His mother shared the link on her Facebook page with the words, "I've been in tears all day." And it was her father, his grandfather, that her son had, wanted to raise the money for in honor of him. And just knowing, I get goosebumps talking about it, that, this mother, it touched her so much, this one story. That's what we do this for right here, that feeling, that idea that we're touching lives.
Yeah, because we've got kids, we've got staff that are doing amazing things, and we have this powerful ability to get those stories out to more people. And it really does make a difference. So that is positive. And I know, within these last couple of years, being in a pandemic, it's been so stressful. But yet we
Right.
have these great stories to share. And so really leaning into knowing that, hey, I get to do this. Not I've got to do this. I get to do this, and you get to play a small role in making sure those stories get out there. So I love that advice. It really is truly about building all those relationships, which of course was challenging, John, when you start in a pandemic and you just get added.
Right.
You've had to work extra hard, but obviously you've been able to do that. So exactly, tell me how social media fits in your role. And what pages do you manage for the school, and how do you get the content? I think you've described it a little bit, but can you break that down for me?
Yeah. So first of all, I believe that the social media has become our main way of communicating with our families in our district. The newspapers in our area. I mean, I think across the country we can say they're dying. The staffs are being cut back. They're not covering as much stuff. They're not out in the schools. Hey, when I first started working at the local newspaper back in 1990, I was in a school and I was in charge of the education coverage. We had reporters in schools every week to take pictures, to write stories. They have one reporter now. They can't cover all the schools, so it's upon us to do that for them and help them do that. Um, so but because they can't, because they're not getting the stuff in there, the social media is a way to get it there quicker to the families quicker, to inform them, to tell that story. And so we started out. When I first came on board, we had a contractor that was helping us with our website, One School View, which I think is now Link. But no one had done any design on it. No one had done anything on it. So I said, can I lead this project? And the superintendent said, yes, go with it. So I brought people in to talk about the design, what we're going to include, started providing a lot of the web content. So the website is up. And then I look and I go, we have this Facebook page, and I'm not even an administrator on it. I want to be an administrator. We had 600 followers, 600 likes on it. The superintendent said, yes, take it over. You go with it. We're now, 18 months later, we're at over 3,000 likes on that and followers. We drove that number up.
That's
Just
amazing, John. And that's I think when I heard that number, I was like, John, you got to be on our podcast. So only 600 followers and now over 3,000, which is awesome, because I always say a great goal for fans on your Facebook page is to try to match your enrollment, your K-12 enrollment, which you have about 2,000 students. So you're
right.
shattering that. You're probably still growing, but that's amazing. And what do you attribute that growth to? Just consistent storytelling?
I think it's providing the content. And, we did, obviously, when COVID hit, everyone wanted to know what was going on. So that grew it a lot right away because we started sharing a lot of the COVID information on Facebook. And I know that you have some rules about, share good stuff on Facebook and newsworthy stuff on Twitter or whatnot. My goal is I want everyone to get it, and I will share it any way I can. And so I'm sending the press releases to the newspaper. I'm calling the radio station. I'm putting it on all our social media accounts, and I'm just putting it everywhere because I don't want someone calling back and saying, I didn't know about that. Well, you know what? I know you're on Facebook. You can go there and find it.
Right.
And so that's why we share a lot of information. But I think originally the COVID news, are you going remote or are you not going remote? Are we wearing masks or are we not wearing masks? Are we hybrid or not? Will you have computers for everyone to take home, Chromebooks for everybody? So all that information we were sharing on the social media. I think so a lot of people tuned in to get that information. Then we start mixing in all the good stories too, and I think that's where it really started to grow. And I know that one of the areas we wanted to grow too is, and we still have a lot of goals, and there's just not enough time in the day to do everything you want to do. But I really want to connect with our alumni a lot more too.
Okay.
And so we do run, and I think this is something we talk about maybe later on your list of questions. But the whole Throwback Thursday, where I'm going into the yearbook and pulling out pictures from homecoming from 30 years ago or 25 years ago and posting those, and how many the reach on those on Facebook is triple what we're getting on anything else. So that's obviously of interest to people in the community to see those kind of things. And again, once they, this is a little trick you always talk about. Once they like it, go and invite them. Go down that list and say, hey, invite. So I know that I do that all the time now, and that helps grow that page as well. They're following on that Facebook as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you have a Facebook page and a Twitter page for the school district. Is that all you manage?
Oh, I wish. So we have the Facebook page for the district, and we have a Twitter account for the district. There's also an Instagram account for the district, which somebody else runs, and I'm trying to get my hands on
Okay.
that. Um, and they don't really post a lot right now, so it's not like I don't think it'll be a big deal. It's just a matter of when I have time to reach out and add something to my list of things. But then we also have each of our schools has their own Facebook page,
Okay.
and I've asked to be an administrator on each of those. So I am either an editor or administrator on all those pages. So I go in and add stuff to their pages too. So as a district page, if we post something that happens at the primary school, I also post it on the primary page. We have an after-school program that wanted their own Facebook page. I put that on there. And then, of course, there's several other, you know, social media pages, Twitter accounts that are out there. So I always try to kind of monitor all those, like, share, whatever's going out. The athletic Twitter account is a big one. A lot of people follow that, and so I try to retweet a lot of the things that go on there, and at least like all those things. So
Okay.
it's a lot of time spent in social media, and and obviously we could probably have a full-time social media person really if we wanted to.
Right. So how do you get your stories specifically? I mean, I know you already talked about you've built a lot of those relationships. So are you just asking staff, "Hey, something great happened, send it my way?"
For the most part, again, try to get out in the buildings myself
Yep.
because typically, if you're in a building, they'll say, "Oh, are you coming to do this?" Well, no, I wasn't, but I will now that I'm here. Like today, I was in the intermediate school to take a picture of. I mentioned that check passing picture. I took two other pictures while I was there. There's a STEM lab that's got new furniture. We looked at that, and there's a student store that kids can use reward points. If you're familiar with PAX, it's the whole PAX good behavior game thing. They have a PAX store, so kids can use their PAX points to purchase little trinket items or fidget spinners or whatever. And so I took that picture too because they got a donation from Walmart. So just by walking into that building, I end up with three different posts on social media, and I only knew about one when I went in there.
Right.
So I think that's important is to get into those buildings. I do participate in the kind of bi-monthly administration meetings. We have been doing them Zoom, and so all the principals are on there. And I always, hey, let me know what's going on. I always get a chance to talk about what I'm working on, but I'm always asking them too. Let me know what's going on. Send me a text, send me an email. I'll try to get out and do things. And a lot of times I might see something that someone else posted, and I'll call the principal. And I'll say, hey, you should have told me about that. Why didn't you tell me about that? And kind of scold them a little bit, in a fun way. But hey, keep me in mind. And again, that's part of that. They never had a communications person before, so they never think about that. So I'm trying to get them in the mindset that hey, we got to call John. We got this really cool event. We got to call John so that we can get some publicity on it. And it really, again, it takes some pressure off them. They don't have to do it because I'm doing it for them.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'm thinking about, and let me know what you think about this, is I'm thinking about creating like a Google form where anybody can submit an idea for a story, and it's right on a shared Google form that anyone can go into and just add it on there, and I can look at it and see if I think it's worthy or not, and then who I should contact, and that way there's an easy way to do that. So I'm thinking that might be some way I can reach out to all the staff and employees and say, hey, if you want, here's a good story.
Right. And there are some, especially bigger districts that have done forms like that. I will say in a smaller district your size, it may be more of shoot me an email when. If you don't have this list of 30 questions that you have to make sure to get,
Right.
of when is the
Yeah. Yeah.
event, because sometimes you get emails and you're like, it'd be nice if you gave me all of the information. The only thing is, with forms, people have to know where to go to the form to find to do it. And so if they just
Right.
know it's your email and be like, "Hey, I've got this thing going on," but there's
Right.
probably people listening out there that have some great ideas where that form
Yeah.
does work well.
Well, and I'm not saying it has to be one or the other. It's like
Right.
any way possible. And give me a text, whatever it is.
Yeah, and you're
So
really
I have
making yourself available, and really focusing on building those relationships. So I have no doubt that it's kind of a home run. What types of stories does your community love to see? You mentioned Throwback Thursdays, so you guys, if you're not doing that every Thursday morning, you're missing out. Like old yearbooks, people love to see that historical stuff. That you,
so easy to do too. Just take a picture of a picture with your phone and upload it.
yeah,
Easy.
it's so easy. But what else does your community really love to see?
I think a lot of times it's the success stories or maybe even the underdog stories. I know I did your Fire Up Your Facebook challenge, and I wrote a story about a young lady who uh, is is already enlisted in the Marines and is going to go to the Marines after she graduates. This girl is 5'2", 105 pounds. Not your typical, what I think of when you say Marine. That's not what I'm thinking of. But I talked to this girl, and she's all about, I can overcome. You can challenge me. I don't care. And I think it was kind of an underdog story and a success story. And people love that story. I think they also, so those obviously the human interest, the overcoming challenge stories are huge. Um, the other stories I think are what we're doing technology wise. We had and especially if it's unique, but we had we have a teacher at our high school that is doing STEM classes, and he did a drone piloting class. So he had 5 students in this drone class. This year they had 10 in it after last
Yeah.
year, and they all went and got their drone license. So they're commercial drone pilots. And so we went out. And of course, you get some cool pictures of drones flying around. You can share the pictures that they take with their drones. We had a roof project going on here. They actually took pictures for our operations manager for the roof project, so we could show them to contractors. So there's just a lot of that kind of cool stuff going on, and I think those are the kind of stories too that we're providing our students with skills that they're going to be able to use in the future. I mean, we always joke about, am I really going to use Latin or Spanish or math or whatever when I get out in the world? Well, here's their skills. We one of the kids that was in the drone pilot class worked this summer, junior in high school, between his junior and senior year. He worked this summer for a real estate company, taking pictures of properties that they post on their website.
Yeah.
I mean, these are skills that they can use right now. And again, people love those types of stories.
Yeah. You talk about skills for their future. It's skills for right now. Like they have the ability to go out and get paid. Same thing for if you can include your students with social media. Like they could start doing social media for local businesses right now while they're going to school and make some great money. So that's awesome. Oh my gosh, John, we our time has flown by and we got to start wrapping up. We've talked about so much today. If you were to break down your best social media tip for the listeners, what would your best tip be?
I think for me, and it kind of stems from the kind of time period we're in, where all the political crap is out there, and the fighting, and my big tip is, you're never going to win an argument on social media. So you're oftentimes better just getting out of it, and be careful with what you post. And um, I have a history, and if you Google me, you can find it if you want. But I learned my lessons. Is you don't want to get in. You don't want. It's not a personal. No one's attacking you personally. They're attacking the district or attacking something in the district. And if it is personal, it's probably not worth getting into. So I try to avoid getting into those fights and arguments on social media. I know sometimes it's hard to bite your tongue, but typically, and if you are going to respond with facts.
Right.
I think that's the key thing. Don't try to get into you know one-upmanship or anything like that, or don't try to criticize anybody. And I think that is the big deal. Is just my dad used to always say, discretion is the better part of valor. So make good decisions when you're, especially on social media.
Yeah. And if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And that means you, as a
Right.
social media manager, after somebody said something not nice to you or your district, it's just like, "Eh, I'm just going to bite my tongue." So that's great advice. So,
Well, sometimes if you respond, you give it a second day's legs,
yeah,
right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to. If it's something negative, it goes away after a day. If you respond to it, now you got 2 days of negative.
right. Yeah.
Let it go
You
away.
might have a stomach ache for a day, right? Well, you have to kind of live with it, but usually by 24 hours, they're on to something else. John, what's the best way for our listeners to stay connected to you? We're going to give them links to the Cambridge City School District website and your social media channels. But if they want to stay connected to you, what's the best way?
Email is what I respond
Okay.
to most. So that's the best way to get a hold of me, and I'm not opposed to getting a text message either. That's fine.
Okay, so we're going to share your email address on the show notes so everybody can click through to those and get connected. I wish you the best. I mean, we should probably come back in another year and a half, John, and see what you've done because you've done so much in such a little amount of time. I really appreciate the conversation and how much you've been able
Thank
to
you.
do for this small school district in Ohio.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening in. Next week, guess what? It's episode 100. Oh my gosh, I started this when COVID hit. That tells us how many weeks we are into all of this mess. But I hope you'll come back next week, listen into another great episode. And until then, keep telling those stories. Bye bye.